Hey my friends, welcome to the PDU, and in this episode, and hopefully, well, there will be some more episodes, I want to, tell you a story. Everyone loves a story, don't they? And in fact, stories are the most powerful modality, the most powerful medium you'll ever imagine. And if you want to improve, just have a listen to this story. It's an awesome story. It will, the old Cluffy guarantee is sort of there, because I just know it changes the way you'll live your life. And it changed the way I live my life. And that's why I wanted to share it with you first. This is such an important story. Have a listen and, enjoy.
Warning.
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 Warning. You are entering into the unplugged mind of Paul Clough. Too late. Personal Development Unplugged.
Doesn't everyone love a story? And when people say, "Can I tell you a story?" don't we lean forward a bit? Hey, it's Paul here. Paul Clough, Personal Development Unplugged, and I want to tell you about stories. In fact, I want to tell you a very personal story. But, as I said, everyone loves a story, especially when you hear those words, once upon a time, or something similar. And what happens to us when we hear those words, or we hear those words, "Can I tell you a story?" We regress, don't we? We go back into that wonderful world of imagination of a child. We go back to being children, I guess. Because as children, we learnt from stories, didn't we? We learnt from all manner of stories. Everything you can think of, from the Hansel and Gretel's, the cartoons, the Disney, my favourite places that I learnt stuff, and then everything else. And how we would then get involved in people reading us a story to go to bed, to go to sleep. It just fired off our imagination, and that's what I'd love to do that with you. You see, I even heard in business, there's a guy, a great businessman, said, there's a great power in a story. He said, never do a pitch. If you want to explain what you want, what you're doing, just tell the story. Simply just tell the story. And the thing is, there are some people in this wonderful world that are blessed. They're blessed with a wonderful storytelling ability, aren't they? They really are blessed, in my mind anyway. In my mind, I've got a special friend, and we're in a group. We're in a pub. We've got a beer. And then he begins to tell a story. And he doesn't just say it word for word. He acts it. We can all see the pictures in our mind of what was happening. He lives it again. And he lives it in such a way that we live it with him. In fact, it's like as a little magician. He keeps us spellbound. What a wonderful skill to have. It's something we could all, I think we've all got it in us. We just need to have that confidence to share those stories, which is what I'm really looking for you, I think. Because my meta description here is our stories. What's yours? What are mine? What's yours or mine stories? Because I know we've all got them. And you see, I first really got into this in some way when I first started learning hypnosis, way back in the year, nearly 21 years ago now. And there's a wonderful, very famous hypnotherapist called Milton Erickson. And he was modelled as part of the foundations of NLP because he was such a great therapist. And people thought he did these wonderful things and special things, and he did. But he generally just told stories, metaphors. And sometimes he would tell the same metaphor to different people with different problems, different issues. And that story taught different lessons to those different people. He would actually even send them on a walk. He used to live in Phoenix, and there's a place called Squaw Peak. I've never been. I'd love to go just to feel the atmosphere there. But he would send them walking up Squaw Peak with something to think about. And they'd be seeking a metaphor from a physical experience to what they see, what they endured. And they'd always come back down with a different insight, a different way of being. Sometimes their issues would just completely disappear and they wouldn't know why. They wouldn't know how, but they just did. So you see, technically, these stories, these metaphors, allow us to go beyond, around, over, under the critical conscious faculty. It goes into our unconscious mind. So what I thought was, I've got some lovely stories, some lovely metaphors that I like to tell. In fact, I've even told one a long time ago about my dog Howie. I may even tell that one again or bring it back. But over the coming weeks, I'd like to share my metaphors. But they're not just mine. I've borrowed them because I think these are the things that we share in this integrated field of learning. But some are my own, some I've borrowed, some I've taken and twisted to make them my own, because when I feel they're my own, they just resonate deeply inside me. And when they resonate inside me, I really hope that they resonate inside of the listener. So I really am hoping that I will do and give them justice, do them justice, do the justice or give them the justice they deserve. And well, that's my intention anyway. I'm going to do it in my way, in my own story way, as it were. So here's the thing. Can I tell you a story? Can you lean? Let's just lean forward together. And maybe just set your intention as I set mine to learn together right now. What would that be like? Let me set the scene. You see, I'd read about Milton's stories, and my teacher of hypnosis, who I later realized did just the same thing or similar things. I just thought he was rambling on. I didn't realize he was giving me these different metaphors to go inside me. But I loved him, and he brought over to this hypnosis training with 2 American NLPers. And they had a 2-day metaphor training. And I thought, well, I've heard about these stories. I just know I want to learn. I'd love to learn. I'm still learning, but I'd love to learn from these people who, if he's brought them into England, they're pretty special. So there I go, I enroll. And as usual, I'm going backwards and forwards in my mind. Is this the right thing to do? It's 300 miles, and I know in America, 300 miles, well, that's just a dawdle, isn't it? A dawdle. Little hop. But for me in England, 300 miles was a mega distance. It really made me think, and I got that blooming déjà vu. I wonder what the French call that. But anyway, I had this déjà vu moment. You see, this is where my adventure started, way back. And I had the same type of concerns about driving all this way, leaving my family. You know, I could see what I wanted to do. I had a voice inside me, I had 2 voices really. I had one saying, oh, this is going to be brilliant. The other one, oh, really? Do you really need to do this? You know, what's it all about? And I got these weird feelings inside, feelings of excitement, feeling of anxiety. And I just didn't know what to do, but I did it. So I, again, left my family. It was only a weekend, but hey, Friday to a Monday or a Sunday evening. But there I go. I left. I drove all those massive 300 miles. And I got there. And what a wonderful training it was. Lovely people there. New people I hadn't met. Well, I hadn't met before anyway. And things were going really okay. And we were learning to put together a story, make up stories. But we've talked about the learning processes, you know, that unconscious incompetence and then conscious incompetence. So I didn't know it, and now I knew I didn't know it. And then I started to get that conscious competence, you know, that really chunky bit. And not chunky, clunky, Paul, get it together, Cluffy. It was clunky, but I was getting there. And then it happened. that aha moment where things just fell into place. I didn't notice at the time. It's grown on me since then. And it's grown on me just as this story grew on me. And it's a story in a story, I guess. And I sort of realised it because I knew something was happening inside, but I didn't know what. And then since then, I've told this story only a few times. I don't tell it often because it evokes emotions in me, because I just got it. And I've got it in so many different ways. And over a period of time, I can really relate to all of that story so much more now. It just seems to make sense to me. So anyway, there we were. Let's get back to that story. There we were in the training room, and everyone is there. And I guess we're coming to the end. It was the second day in the afternoon, and we were sort of finishing off. We were telling a metaphor, telling a story to each other as a bit of our training, a bit of our, doing the drills, as it were. And getting ready to go-ish. We knew there's about half hour to go. And then I heard the voice of one of the trainers, the husband. And he just shouted out, Norma, the rose. And I thought, what the hell is that? Norma, the rose? And it was as if time stood still. Well, for me anyway. Have you ever had that? When you're so transfixed, as if you're transported into a different place. You see, we were doing some questions and answers. And just from the back, this voice, it said, Norma, the rose. And what had happened was one of the therapists there, one of in our group, was asking a question. And he was asked, well, this is such a good question. And the rose is the answer. And again, I'm so intrigued. I'm so curious. What is it about the rose and Norma? And they said, okay, well, to this guy, will you come? And he's a male guy, if that makes sense. Come and sit on this stool in the middle of the room, and we're all sitting around in like a semicircle around him. And Norma sat in front. And she said, just for the group, maybe you'd explain your issue. What is it you can't, not getting? And the guy sat there and he said, well, I love this weekend and I'm trying to find the right story, the right metaphor. You see, I have this client. She's a lovely girl. And she's been coming to me for therapy. And I'm just not getting it. She's been abused. Mentally, physically, sexually. And I just can't make any headway. And in fact, I'm so concerned for her. What I've done is I've gone to all the therapists I know, all different modalities of therapy. And we're all trying to help this girl. None of us are making any progress. And we're not charging her any money because we just want to help her. But he said it is so heartbreaking to see her with these issues and the effects of these issues. And I just don't know what to do. And I just wondered, could you help? Could you just point me in a direction? And I thought, just listening to him speak, I was imagining myself in his place. What would I do? But the thing is, Norma says, okay, I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story, but before I do, I want you to become somebody else. I want you to sit there and listen to me intently. But I want you to be your client. You know, with your empathy, how she feels. Or you think you know how she feels. I want you to feel it as if you were her. And when you're there, just give me a nod. So he sat there just for a few seconds. And then he nodded. And you could see his physique had changed slightly. And his face just dropped a little bit. You could see he wasn't the he was a happy-go-lucky guy. But he just suddenly changed. And then Norma began to speak. She said, do you know what? I once had a beautiful rose bush. This beautiful rose bush, well, it just grew in our garden. And it was so, so beautiful. I could just look at it for ages, just sit in my garden and look. And I seemed to have this connection with it, and it seemed to have a connection with me. And you know what? I treasured it with all my heart. And then something happened. I wanted to make alterations to the house. I had the plans drawn up, and the builder came in, and he came in to do the work that I wanted. And he seemed to understand me and what I wanted. I explained about the rose bush and how important it was to me. And I did it the best as I could. I tried to explain in some weird way that connection I had with this rose bush and how dear it was to me. And he was a builder after all. And you will probably understand that more than most. Well, he promised to look after my rose bush, protect it as the work progressed. So, with that in mind, I left the house in his good, capable hands, and went to stay away whilst the work was being done. It was so messy and dusty. And when they're doing those alterations, it was just too much. And I had other things to do, you see. I just had to get on. So I left everything in his capable hands. Anyway, I returned when the work was done. And as you do, you went to see your rose bush. To my horror, it was gone. Where it should have been, where I could remember it so vividly, there was a pile of rubble, debris, rubbish. My heart sank so I couldn't believe it. I carefully lifted each layer of that rubbish, that debris, put it aside, put it over there, put it in the bin. So carefully did I lift it up. And it took a little while, but I did the work so gently. And I could gently expose the place where my rose bush had been. And I found it. Yeah, I found it. But it was broken beyond recognition. Not even a branch remained. Can you imagine how I felt? I felt broken too, hurt, lost, and even a little guilty. I cried. I cried to myself. I just couldn't feel any worse. I know I could look for another rose bush to replace this rose bush, but that didn't feel right. Well, I guess to console myself, I thought at least I had the memories of my time sitting in my quiet place with my rose bush. And I could remember them, but it wasn't the same. I can actually sometimes remember times and relive those wonderful times, those wonderful memories, as if they were actually here right now, seeing, hearing and feeling those times again. And those memories were a great comfort. Those feelings were a great comfort. But I had to move on, I guess. I had things to do, to plan, to move on with the new work in the house now the builders had gone. So I did. And it was in one of my times in my quiet place. I'll show it to you sometime. I was just sitting quiet, minding my own business. And then, can you believe it? As I was looking, I noticed a small bump in the ground where my rosebush had once been. So I began to look even closer. And there, in the centre, deep down, was a small stem growing. I carefully removed the soil and around it so it could see the light. And yes, it was my rosebush. Small and tender. But I just knew. And over the next few days, I tended and nurtured that rose with gentle, my full loving care. Protected from harm now. And always letting the light shine in on it. And guess what? It grew. It grew stronger each day. Although I gave it support as well. it seemed to bend in the wind now and support itself. It really was amazing. And do you know that you can take cuttings from a rose bush and have them grafted to others? I didn't. But we do know now, don't we? You see, I don't know if you get the emotion that I get from my past, how sometimes it just resonates with me. I've even got there must be dust in the air because my eyes are watering, I guess. And that's why I very rarely tell this story, because of the emotions and the thoughts it brings out in me. Maybe I should read it more often, because if the emotions are there, things to work on. And I know that I owe a huge debt of gratitude and thanks to those two American NLPers. They were Phil and Norma Barretta. I've now got a book with their stories too. They were awesome people. They are awesome people. They made a difference to my life, I guess. And they're still doing it with that story. I just love it. I just go there. I can see it in my mind anytime. Now, I know I got my golden ticket from that training, from this story, this one particular story. And what I didn't tell you, the guy who was sitting there as if he was his client, he was in tears after about the first minute of that story. And you could see him, he was visibly shaken and affected emotionally by those words. And when it ended, he had a big smile on his face because he said, "That's it. That is it." And he got his golden ticket and I got my golden ticket. And I wonder, I truly hope that you got your golden ticket from this. Or if you know somebody that you think their story will, if shared with them, they'll get their golden ticket, or it just gets them to think of things, maybe about other people, about themselves. That's all we need to do, I guess. So in some ways, I fulfilled what I wanted to tell you. I wanted to tell you a story. Also wanted to tell you a bit about me, I guess. And if you read between the lines and the emotion, you'll get a little bit. And also wanted to tell you there, I didn't know that was going to happen. I just thought I was going to learn about how to create a story. And the lessons just came. And they come from so different places. Norma, the rose, those words are in my head. So maybe we can just, get curious. Maybe a little thoughtful. As I said, my meta view. We've all got stories. You've got yours, you've got mine, and I'd love you to tell them. Tell and share the hidden golden tickets in your life so they can help you and help other people. And that would be awesome. And I just hope I've done it justice. And I've done Phil and Norma Barretta justice by sharing their story, then my story, to you. And as I said, what I'm going to do is I've got more stories. Maybe not quite as emotional as that, but I've got some more short stories. Stories I've pinched, I've adapted, and some of my own. See, this is mine and theirs together. So it's my story, really. But I'm going to share them, not every week, because I just want to sprinkle them through the episodes. And then what I'm thinking of is maybe I'm going to bring them all together and put them on the hypnosis side, the hypnosis part of the website, which is just dedicated to hypnosis and NLP processes. You know where it is, don't you? paulcloughonline.com/podcast. There is 50. I didn't realise there's 50 there now. 50 processes, hypnosis and NLP. Awesome. And guess what? They cost freedom. Nothing. They're yours to play with. Just go to paulcloughonline.com/podcast. Sign up. Boom. They're all yours. Isn't that wonderful? Well, yes, Paul, I think it is wonderful. Thank you very much. And And what I'd like to do also, just remember you got that free hypnosis if you go to paulcloughonline.com. So before you put the podcast in, you can go to there. And there's some free hypnosis there, which, well, helps you to reduce your anxiety. All in about 15 minutes. A 15-minute hypnosis, which reduces anxiety. And once you've listened to it a few times, you can always listen to it as many times as you like because it's free and it's yours and downloadable. But once you get it, it'll start to, every time stress or anxiety comes along, it will start to kick in, I believe, and therefore help you deal and be a different person, be able to make great choices. There we go. There'll be a few more things after this. I'd love your thoughts on this and love your reactions and your thoughts of listening to more. Is it something you're curious to do? And I'd also really love to know what you got from this and get from the other stories, particularly about the metaphors, this metaphor. Because as I said right at the very beginning, Milton Erickson used to tell the same story to so many different people, and they all got it in a different way. In fact, I pinched that story, or his story, and told it to my mother. And she didn't get it, she said. But then I saw her start to behave differently. And she did. She just didn't know she did. She just told me it was a silly story. But it goes in. So I'd love to know what your reactions were, your thoughts, maybe how it's changed you in such a wonderful way. Well, how'd you do that? Well, you know the old feedback at personaldevelopmentunplugged.com. Comes to me personally, I'll personally reply to you. And you never know, when you do, I've been known to slip in another hypnosis track just to say thank you. Because I just love this interaction. And it's my way of selfless service. Just because I do want something in return. I know that. I want you to become bigger, better than you ever dreamt possible. That's what I want. And in turn, I get to feel good for it. So I always get something out of it. And I know you'll get something out of it too. So if you'd like to just send me that email, just say hi. An email to say hi. And there's also, if you wanted to sit down with me and have a cup of coffee, you could listen to this. Yep, there's so many different ways that you can support this podcast. One of them obviously is sharing and subscribing and things like that. But if you wanted to, you could join in the metaphor of buying me a beer, buying me a cup of coffee, but you're not actually buying me anything. In fact, you're just helping support the show, support the PDU, the Personal Development Unplugged podcast. Hey, sometimes it's nice just to give that bit of help if you enjoy it. I've done it so many times with the things that I enjoy and the things that I use. And I think it just goes to show your appreciation, and it helps to keep things moving. So if you'd like to buy me a cup of coffee or a beer, or just simply join in that metaphor to support this Personal Development Unplugged podcast, please go to buymeacoffee.com. Then it's /Cluffies, CLOUGHIESPDU. There's also a link to it in the show notes and also on the website. It's all over the place. So if you'd like to join that, just click on the button. And also, when you do, I'm working a way that I can help give a little bit back to you when you do that. But that's going to be a surprise. Okay? Anyway, back to what we were talking about. Yeah, that's it. Where you could sit and have a beer or a coffee. That would be great. Become a real part of this community, as I know you want to be. Anyway, enjoy. Any thoughts you have of issues or things that we could discuss, or a process you'd like to have developed for your particular issue, your thoughts or the things you want, let me know. Same email address, feedback@personaldevelopmentunplugged.com. Give me a few thoughts to get my little grey matter thinking. And maybe we'll come up with a new story as well. Who knows? Anyway, before I go, there'll be at least one more thing, and I think there'll also be maybe thoughts or reminding you of earlier episodes of the Personal Development Unplugged podcast. Things that might have just slipped by you, or maybe you weren't here when they first come out, and give you an idea of what the type of things I was talking about way back then. Okay? Anyway, have more fun than you can stand. Enjoy every heartbeat. And as usual, speaking to you, the unconscious mind, what would it be like to surprise their conscious mind? To feel happy for no reason. And with that, my friend, I will speak to you next time. So way back in the day, well, not all the way back in the day, back to, hashtag 102. We did an episode called Letting Go of the Old You. And it's so important to let go of the old you, because every day you change, you're a different you. So you need to let go of the old you and drag it around. So here's that intro from way back then, episode 102, Letting Go of the Old You. Have a listen, and if it spikes your interest, hey, go back and have a listen. So what's this podcast all about? Well, it's all about being the real you, but also being better than the real you, but also about dehypnotizing you, which is really strange because I'm also going to do a hypnosis track to go with it. It's all very confusing, but as usual, it may just make all the difference to you right now. Have a listen. So before you leave this unplugged mind of mine, this hypnotic mind, if you enjoyed this podcast or any of the other podcasts, please do subscribe. It helps this podcast grow and affect so many more people. And we love to leave everyone in a better place than we found them. And this will help the podcast. It will help you, and it will help, everyone that you know. So if you could just subscribe and share this podcast to everyone you blooming well know. That's the only cost. Pay it forward to everyone. And when you do that, boom, we are all going to make a difference to this little old planet Earth of ours and the people in it. But let's make a good world, a nice world. Okay, you can now prepare to leave this unplugged mind.
Warning, you are now leaving the unplugged mind of Paul Clough. It's time to fly on your own. Be brave, my friend.
Personal Development Unplugged.